Kick it off. Okay, so Roy, I've got you on the GOP side, and we've got our good friend Mike Chapman over there on the Democrat side. Who wants to go first? You know, what are your hot sports takes on right now, just covering the presidency and how this is shaping out?
To get your person through the Senate, you've got to go, cut a deal, or make sure Mitch McConnell agrees with what the person, or kind of agrees with the person that you're putting through. So that's why you're seeing that everybody that looks like they're coming through is basically a moderate, reasonable, Democrat. I want to say the Democrat, it's basically the old guard Democrats are coming back, and you can see that by some of the just the staffers. And I mean, Steve Ricchetti, I mean, Mike and I actually know him, and you're going like, wow, he is going way back to the old guard Democrats to run this administration, because you know what, I think he just wants to get in there and start off as fast as he can. You can't do that with a bunch of new people. And that's what you're probably going to see is that bent. So I'll stop there, Mike. Is that the direction you're thinking?
Yeah. If you read the media coverage of the way Biden and Mitch McConnell, for example, will work together, I think they miss a lot, because a lot of the reporters haven't been around that long to know that guys like McConnell and Biden, they're not as much worried about left and right as taking care of their home constituents back in Delaware, Kentucky. And if you're the leader of the Republican caucus, you're looking at 50 to 52, however many he ends up with after Georgia, different states. They're in various points in time in their reelection mode, because the Senate does a third every 2 years. And he's going to be looking out for them. So, and to see where he can pick off a Democrat here and there. Biden gets that. He lived in that world for decades. Believe it or not, as senior as he is now, and he is senior, today's his birthday, I believe. He came to the Senate when he was 30. So here's a man that lives and breathes Washington insider, which is the total opposite of the guy who's hunkered down in the Oval Office over there with Roy right now. He's a disruptor. I've said for the whole time Trump's been here, he's the first independent to get elected president, because I don't know that you would really call him a Republican by any measure that I used to call him. He's more liberal on trade than Hillary was, and never changed. And he kind of picks his battles based on his own beliefs, not party structure. Now, Mitch has been able to get all his wish list through while Trump was president: the judges, the justices, the tax cuts, and the deregulation. Those are the things that Joe Biden knows Mitch still cares about. And on the other hand, Mitch is going to look at the fact, once the Georgia races are over and the inauguration happens, nothing's going to break on Mitch's front before Trump's out of office. He's too canny. So the point when Biden becomes president and they're talking about what can they do together, they're going to be two gentlemen who've known each other forever talking. What you see in the media, again, may not portray it that way, but the real stuff that Roy and I work on will be handled much more professionally than it has been. For example, even now, Mnuchin, up until recently, has been able to craft some of the biggest bills ever passed through Congress with Nancy Pelosi. That's a Republican and a Democrat working together. It doesn't get the same kind of media coverage because it doesn't fit into the narrative of Trump versus the world. But that's what happens in Washington. And Roy and I talk about this all the time, that for a group like this and what we do, we have to keep our eyes on the ball, that even though there's this big media storm going on at all times anymore, we can still get things done. And Roy and I totally agree on this. The House is going to do what it's going to do, and then we write the bill in the Senate. And in the Senate, you have Democrats and Republicans who are on our side on the various issues. And we have to sell them on how to get our specific stuff through. At the same time, keeping an eye on that larger storm that the media likes to generate. And unfortunately, it's always about the next election. So even though in this first 6 months of the Biden administration, even year, it's a great opportunity to pass legislation. If you let yourself, you can get caught up in 2024 election or the 2022 elections. All that stuff counts, but not for every minute of every day for a legislative aide whose portfolio includes mortgage, finance, housing, etc. They're aware of the election, but they're working on their issues. Roy, would you say that that's fair?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Everybody, at the end of the day, it's sort of like anything. It's like it's every man for himself or woman for himself eventually. The only thing that I think will have to be decided and is interesting, and I don't know how it actually, I haven't put a lot of thought in how it plays out, is the spending. We're going to run out of money December 11th. So somewhere between now and, well, it can't be till after Thanksgiving because I think the Senate left. I think the Senate left town. They have to come up with like, well, hey, what are we going to do with the spending legislation to avert the government shutdown? And that's the easy fix. You can always kick that can way down the road if you wanted to. But if you wanted to, depending on how you cut these things, depending on what senators are coming and which ones are going, who needs a pile of, who wants to cut a deal to get something for their state, this is kind of like the time you do it. And, we have to keep our eye on that, but I don't think that impacts brokers or the housing industry that much. You may find as well as you may want to do a stimulus bill in the middle of December somewhere because there's a lot of problems that are looming. One of them being the extra unemployment insurance is totally running out at the end of December. So that's an impactful thing for housing, well, whether it's the renters or the mortgage, the folks in trying to make their mortgage, and that impacts the seller, the servicers and the lenders. So I would suspect that there will be a deal cut somewhere in there, and that's an opportunity for brokers to at least voice their opinion. I don't know if you're going to get more out of get something specifically for your industry, but that's when you can sort of step up and show the industry and your members that we're here and what we do.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. It's kind of funny. Oh, did I do that? What is that? Hello? Okay. All right. Hey, Mike, it's kind of funny. So you mentioned, that the Republicans that Mitch is going to have up to 52 seats. So is your crystal ball telling us that we're going to have that gridlock in place?
Well, gridlock has been in place before Trump, and it's my assessment of it is it has to do with the politicization, the never-ending campaign, increased influence by political consultants. And as a lobbyist, I don't mind taking a shot at the political consultants. They're the ones gumming up the works. Leave it to the lobbyists. We'd be doing 3 or 4 big bills a year, getting all kinds of stuff done. But this caution that has overtaken both sides, and they're getting more isolated from each other, has been a trend. And if you go back a little ways, let's just go to 2000. George W. Bush ran as an outsider, even though he knew Washington well through his dad. And with the beginning of that whole thing, starting with that close election and Bush v. Gore Supreme Court, there was a lot of stalemate and gridlock. Obama came in as an outsider, stalemate and gridlock. And Trump has been an outsider. And even in that case, there's been stuff that got done under both. I think the different dynamic, even if you have 52 Republicans in the Senate is that Joe Biden is a creature of the Senate. He is a long time deal maker. The one thing that the left side of the left wing of the Democratic Party tried to hit him on was he's too cozy with Republicans. You know, he even talked about how he knew how to get along with the old Southern segregationists back in his early days when he first got elected and got knocked around in the primary for that. Those are actually skills that are going to help him. He is not going to be, I don't think, as ideological. It was smart of him to bring Kamala Harris on board as his running mate, because it showed that even though he is considered part of the old guard, that was a nod to the new guard. But she's also very pragmatic. She's not going to lead a revolt from within. She's going to be his partner. I bet you as loyal to him as he was to Barack Obama. So on the December 11th deadline that Roy brought up, that is a big point. A lot of Democrats that I'm hearing are saying, and these are Senate Democrats, are saying, we don't have to pass the HEROES Act. We can do something different in order to get some relief out there. I think that's a signal to Pelosi that either we do a small bill as part of this first CR on December 11th, or we're going to take half the blame, at least, for not doing anything before the end of the year. So I'm guessing there will be a CR like to March, April, with enough unemployment insurance relief and other things, prohibition on throwing renters out. I don't know what all they'll throw in there. They're probably not going to be able to do as much state and local aid as they would like. And then I guess it's Mitch McConnell's job to convince the president to sign it. So good luck. I'm not sure how he does that. That's the biggest mystery in Washington, is how do you get Trump to agree to stuff between now and the end of the year? Roy,
I think
you.
you know, if you try to channel the President Trump right now, I don't think he would be like, you know what, you guys figure it out February 22nd or whatever. I'm out of here. I just think that's what he would do. I don't think, unless you get a lot of his, and I'm not sure how many friends, Republican senator friends of his would come and beg him to do something, but that'd be the only way you get him to sign something. I don't think a Democrat or Biden could get him to sign anything.
Or McConnell.
Or McConnell. He's just not going to do it. Because, Mitch was, early on, Mitch was kind of nasty to him. So just remember that. He has, one thing, Trump's got a really, really good memory. Let's see what else. Oh, one interesting fact everybody should just note is, if somebody like Liz Warren, is begging and banging on the door to get appointed to something, or Chris Coons, which I think, from Delaware, he'll get appointed to probably Secretary of State, because I think that's his, is going to be on his wish list. He'd probably get that, because you have to remember who the governors are in these states that appoint people. In Massachusetts, it's a Republican. So it's going to be, I just can't see, you have to sort of like, okay, well, what's more important to Biden and the Democrats in the Senate? 53 Republican majority or 52. So you can let Liz Warren go be Treasury Secretary or whatever she wants to do. But the bottom line is she has not, I have not heard her name. You heard it before the election as Secretary of the Treasury, but after the election, it's all these not Syria, I shouldn't say serious. It's all these, Washington insiders, people that were on the FDIC board, people that, run some of these large agencies. That those are the names you hear for Treasury. And I think it's because it's like, where are you going to put her? Because you're going to lose a seat in the Senate. But you will. So I always watch, the guy I always watch for trying to telegraph the Democratic positions is Pete Buttigieg, because he is like the policy wonk, brainy guy. that, you know, he can go into any Democratic debate, you know, inside the DNC and probably debate everybody under the table with a very logical and cogent argument about policy. And I think that's the guy that if you're a Republican, you watch, you know, or I guess they've been a Democrat, you watch what he says because he's going to be listened to.
See where he's going, you know, but that does bring up kind of an interesting point, Mike and Roy, though. It's like, okay, so if you keep the Republican majority in the Senate, albeit a, you know, razor thin margin, you still have the House controlled by the Democrats, even though Republicans did manage to pick up seats, which I think is a very important thing to note. But you also keep the more progressive folks from being appointed into these key positions. Can we just kind of transition over into, you know, I think the thing that's on everybody in the mortgage industry's mind is, you know, we still think of the Richard Cordray era at the Bureau, and, you know, kind of like huddle up to each other in the corner in the closet. You know, what's going to happen, or what are your hot takes on who's going to be appointed, you know, in the next administration?
To the CFPB?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Well, it's going to have to be somebody who can get through the Senate, and that's going to be a negotiated settlement between Mitch McConnell and the president and his people. I think that to kind of, before we go off of Liz Warren, there was a lot of fear on Wall Street and in business community that she would be Treasury Secretary, and, you know, unless we had 62 Democratic senators, that's not going to happen. For the reasons that Roy mentioned, Charlie Baker, governor of Mass, would appoint a Republican to replace her. And that brings back memories of when Ted Kennedy passed away and Scott Brown got elected and the Tea Party was born for Democrats. So they're not going to go there. And so even though she's going to be very influential, she's going to be influential from the Senate Democratic caucus. It's going to be somebody that Wall Street will be happier with. And, you know, that's the thing. We've had this rift in the Democratic Party between the progressives and the moderates. And, you know, Joe Biden was always considered too moderate. Well, he got the nomination because the Democratic Party is not just the progressive wing as typified on Twitter by AOC and Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders. That is an important part of the Democratic Party. But the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the old guard Democrats, the new Democratic Coalition, and the House, these are, you know, suburban districts that represent corporate America and average Americans. They're all part of the Democratic Party. I think the biggest surprise to my fellow Democrats was how many people are actually out there who would vote against the Democratic Party because it was portrayed as captive by Sanders and AOC and those guys. And the Republicans did a brilliant job. We always forget to compliment the Republican National Committee. They are genius campaigners. They get the word out there door to door every time and win elections. I think they won 2016 for Trump personally because they were so well organized, and I think they drove the vote this time. And you know, Kevin McCarthy's part of that. Steve Scalise, so's Mitch McConnell, and even though they represent, in theory, fewer people, they get them out to vote, and they win if it's at all possible. I think Trump actually dragged on their numbers this time, but you know, there's no way to prove that. I think, and so the point of that is, you know, the Democratic Party has to stay awake to the fact there are a lot of Americans who don't want to do the Bernie Sanders agenda, both in the party and outside the party.
Or defund police.
Yeah, I will tell you what happened at Miami. Democratic stronghold. Point blank, perfect storm. Democratic stronghold. But conservative, moderate Democrats, blue dog Democrats like myself that are in Broward here, two strong, well-known Democrats lost. Workers of Powell and Donna Shalala, well-known in the neighborhoods, lost because of the progressive left agenda down there. Absolutely. I've talked to Shalala's chief of staff just yesterday, and he's like, Kimber, he goes, we lost because of what you just said, Mike, and we've lost and I'm a Democrat and can say it, if we're going to continue governing, it has to govern from the center. Our 2022, you're going to lose the House and the Senate, and you're going to have a lame duck president for 2 years.
Yep.
And so Biden knows that.
So before we delve into like the specific issues and predictions sort of phase of this, and then we can go to questions, is I don't want to skip over the House too quickly because of this. What's interesting, and I think Mike and I saw this, God, how many years ago at the Realtors, where we saw when you get a thin margin like this in the House, you really have to go find you have to find these caucuses, which are the problem solver caucus is I think the most important one right now, and the Hispanic caucus. And then there's a couple more, but I think those are the two you have to look at, because with those two, you can cobble the Republicans in the House can cobble together with them, very narrow niche issues that appeal to what Mike's referring to, these center-right Democratic districts that need something. They need to get things passed, except for, they don't need the Green New Deal to pass, or let's take over the suburbs to pass and make the suburbs do what we want. They need the opposite of that. They need something that they can assure themselves of being reelected. And that's where you're going to find sort of like the cracks and your opportunities. And you just have to keep your eyes and ears open for those opportunities.
No, that's right. And so Nancy Pelosi gets that, and the dynamic in the House, we talk about it in the document we prepared. She's doing her last term as Speaker, and there's not going to be a revolt among the Democratic caucus, because they're looking to 2023 to have a new Speaker, and that would be their goal, hopefully not minority leader. And my money's on Hakeem Jeffries, who is very aware of everything we're talking about here. Even though he's from the Bronx and he's solid with the progressives, he travels the country like Kevin McCarthy does. He knows these districts, and they're going to be looking for ways to work with business, not scare business away. Certainly, when we start talking about small business, everything to do with the real estate industry at that home buyer level, that is America. And if you're on the wrong side of that, the party is not going to grow. It's not going to become or stay in the majority. And I think that's how we sell to the rank and file Democrats in the House, is that these things are helping all Americans, everyday Americans all over the country, build wealth. You hear, if you go to a Financial Services Committee hearing now, that top tier, and these are senior level Congressional Black Caucus members, they all talk about the way wealth was built in their family was when granddad or dad bought a house. And universally, they're not talking about, making it big on the stock market or, creating the Facebook of their day. It's buying a house, that basic. So we have a story to tell to those guys, and I think they'll hear it.
For years, our talking points, even back in my previous tenure, and even what I still use, are the 2010 HUD statistics, or not HUD, census statistics of household net wealth, and it was $110,000 for white families. It was $69,000 for Asian Americans, it was 74.50 for Hispanics and 49.80 for African Americans. And that was household net wealth. And the key driver in those was home equity. And that was in 2010, which is, coming out of the recession before. So just imagine what those numbers are going to look like when we see the results from the 2020 census. It's going to first show a further extrapolation of that. So we definitely have a story to tell, and I think we'll be able to capture on to really promote the housing agenda, at least from our standpoint. With that
John. Yeah, today, it's funny you said that today on Frank and Brian show, this is exactly what I was talking about. We just had the Freddie came out and MBAs came out and everyone's come out saying we're going to have a banner year in housing in 2021. But what they don't realize is that and we have a median income price of homes rising. The reason that is because the medium upper income class, and this is something, John, we need to really focus on if we're going to get the Democrats maxing waters on our entire industry, is the reason that you have an increase in housing, median income price in housing, is because it's the middle upper class to the upper echelon that's able to work from home, that's able to be from home, they're able to do the things that they need to do, and they're able to move from all over the country. That's the reason we're seeing a boom in Florida, is because they're moving from California, New York, those Zoom people, those virtual people. What we're missing, and we will have a come to Jesus meeting once this is over, is that average working class blue collar citizen that has turned around and used every dime that they've got to live because they can't afford their paycheck getting ready to another closing. The first-time home buyer, the DPA assistants are going away, especially like in my county, in my state. That money is being used for renters, and that money is being used to help people with their mortgage payments. But yet at the same time, Fannie and Freddie have tightened up on their 97% programs, the Home Ready, the Home Possibles, and done away and not looked at new avenues. We have a real gap, a real crisis that's getting ready to come, and we keep talking about fairness and discrimination, and that's what the Democrats and the progressives on. But the real discrimination is coming. What you just said is that the inequity of that whole thing that boils down to is us in the housing industry. We as an industry have got to bring people to the table and start finding solutions, and NAMB is the people to do that. And this administration and the Biden administration is the administration. If we carry that message to the Hill, it's going to help us with the CFPB, it's going to help us at NAMB as a whole, and it's going to help us with every consumer and Maxine Waters and her group. And it's a reality that's getting ready to hit, and it's already hit. No one's dug into it and seen it.
So, thanks for that, Kimber. So, Roy, let's just kind of jump in, kind of piggyback off of what Kimber just said. As we're trying to help shape our policy agenda for next year. Biden was, he's on record wanting to throw out a $15,000 tax credit for first-time buyers. What is your take on that?
Well, that's, you always, I guess he's negotiating, and you always, he's stealing, Trump's book. He's like, hey, if you want to pass a $5,000 tax credit for first time, you start at 15. So that's, will a 15 credit get through the Senate? No. Then that's really all you have to look at is like, what will get through the Senate? And you can what we used to call log rolling. Hey, you can finesse maybe that through, but not at maybe at a $5,000 or $7,500 level. And I think that's what I would think is because a lot of people on the Hill, no matter how long ago they bought their house, realize that the first rung of gaining wealth is buying a house, and I think they will look at that again. And I know there's some pushback that these fat tax credit things really hurt the short end of the market and whatnot. But at the end of the day, you want to look good, and passing something for a first time home buyer, makes you look good.
I mean that I remember the Bush tax credit of $7,500 for first time buyers, and it was a little complicated from underwriting, but it really was helpful for the consumers that were able to take advantage of it.
Right, and I think Obama had one in there.
Obama had an $8,000 one.
Yep.
So that's what I think you can sort of feel that deal coming along with some people in the Senate. You could probably pull something off, but they're going to ask for something in exchange. Like you're not going to get a corporate tax increase through, I don't think. And another thing, that Mike was touching on in terms of these suburban Democratic districts is you sort of see it in the ones that Nancy lost was, the people, and Kimber touched on it, the people that, were the educated, could stay home and work from home types with their fancy computers and their type of job they can do that. They loved COVID. I mean, there's a lot of folks who are going like, hey, this isn't bad. But the people that the Democrats are got to go back and get back on board are the folks that couldn't do that. They were kind of abandoned. And those were the go out and work everyday workers at the restaurant, or, I had to do face-to-face, or I'm doing sales face-to-face. Those are the lower income folks that got killed during the past 9 months. And you can see that in the numbers when you start, drilling down, is that they're going like, hey, I don't have such a great deal here with this situation. So I think that that whatever you can do to help that sector of our population, it will be will be looked upon as a good idea. And housing is certainly one of those, because a lot of those folks that are in that sector can't really go buy a house. And I think that they would appreciate any kind of help toward that. And that's where broker issues can come in.
It's kind of interesting. So being mindful of broker issues and timing in DC is everything, right? So 2 weeks prior to the election, the Urban Institute released their report stating that African Americans pay, I think, on average of $14,000 more for mortgages than the non-minorities. Is that a potential, pitfall or roadblock that could come into play for originators, or do you think it falls into our hands of saying, hey, this is why you need us, America, to go out there and promote these products and programs?
Well, I mean, my take on that is, and I've seen it way too long, is and I want to call them lying with statistics, but you know what? The problem is, you really don't know, statistically, I'm sure that's exactly right. But what you don't know are what were the credit scores? What was the reserves? What type of program was it? Or, did they miss most of their auto payments? Or, because if you don't know that, and if you can't compare, you're not comparing apples to oranges then. You're comparing apples to oranges. You're not comparing the similar things. And I think people on the Hill eventually, even the Democrats and Republicans figure that part out. So I think that'll be thrown around, but everybody that's, in Washington has seen that kind of a fluff movie before, where they're trying to fluff up a problem, which when you really drill down is really not there.